So thank you all so much for joining. If it's your first Zioness webinar, then thank you for getting involved with Zioness, and we hope you will stay involved. We are an activist organization, a domestic social justice activist organization for American Jews who want to be part of our movements for social and racial and economic and gender justice in America. We also, want to show up as proud Jews and Zionists who don't want to check any part of our identity in our activism, who want to tell the world that our Zionism is totally consistent with our progressive values and our progressive identities. And we want to be able to do this work to build relationships, to build strong coalitions for justice, because it is quite an urgent time for that work to happen, and the Jewish community wants to be part of it.
Amen. Well said, well said.
And actually, so the reason that I was connected to Tiffany was because she is the living embodiment of a Zioness, and she spoke at the Women's March in San Francisco this January and gave this incredible speech about, the Jewish community fighting anti-Semitism, fighting all forms of bigotry, standing up for women, creating diverse coalitions for the advancement of women's issues, for gender justice, for equal pay, for reproductive health. And it was so meaningful for me, because we don't honestly always see proud Jewish women, having these conversations. And we actually had a chapter meeting last night in Chicago, and everyone was really feeling like there are so many cases and opportunities for them to be outspoken on issues that they care about, on domestic issues that they care about. But when it comes to standing up proudly as a Jew, and as a Zionist Jew especially, they get silent. They feel afraid to engage. They feel afraid to say the wrong thing, or like they're going to confront anti-Semitism and not know how to respond to it. And so, it is our mission to empower people to do that. Tiffany doesn't need our help.
Well, no, but I loved learning that you existed. I was like, there are others? That's the way I felt. When I heard the name is so brilliant, and it just captured this power, this powerful Jewish woman. And with the way I feel, which I'm an activist and I love Israel, and Israel is just as complicated as America, but it doesn't stop my love for Israel. And I made a film years ago with my husband called The Tribe, which looked at American Jewish identity through the history of the Barbie doll. And we made it a long time ago. It still plays, and anyone can find it. We'll send it in a link. But one of the lines we spent 4 months
follow up to this.
One of the lines we spent 4 months on was, this is the line: just as you can love America and not agree with all of its politics, you can love Israel and not agree with all of its politics. And somehow that seemed to frame the issue, because our parents' generation, there was no complication. And for our generation, it's just as complicated, but it doesn't have to stop your initial love of a country and what it stands for and what it can be. And we're currently living in a time in America where we are not living up to our potential. But I still love what America can be. And, my older daughter, she wanted, to form a more perfect union. We're always striving to be a light unto nations. And like, how do we keep the striving part ahead of all the muck?
Yes. And so that we can get into the muck. We can still, do the hard work, but
we can do the muck, but don't lose the vision.
Yes.
Don't lose the vision in the muck. And then that's what Zioness stood for. When I read it, I was like, oh my God, I must meet Amanda. So I'm happy to be here.
I met her. I was like, that's my people. So I'm super excited. I'm going to be totally honest here. I think I know Tiffany, I think she won't be offended. I'm going to say, when I first was like, okay, 24/6 unplugging, I don't do Shabbat for a lot of reasons, mostly just because I never turn off, I never stop. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. It's going to challenge my own existence. And, the fact that I don't do Shabbat, even though I value it, I appreciate it. And like when I have Shabbat dinner or something, I love that experience, but I don't turn off. So I started reading this book. And for anyone who's watching who hasn't read it, you absolutely have to read this book. It was mind-blowing. It's not necessarily what you think it's going to be. It is so creative. It is so brilliant. It made me think about so many different things in my life, in the world, in the way that I interact with the world. It's like you can't imagine before you start reading this book how much there is to say about Shabbat. Like I don't know how you did it, but it was incredible. I learned so much. I have a million questions. So, okay, I'm going to start with the introduction because Tiffany is so impressive. I don't want to forget this part. I feel like we jumped right in. Okay, Tiffany is an Emmy-nominated filmmaker, speaker, the founder of the Webby Awards. She has received over 80 awards and distinctions for her films and work, including selection for the Albert Einstein Foundation's initiative Genius 100 Visions for the Future. She's been on NPR's list of best commencement speeches, was named by Newsweek as one of the women shaping the 21st century. Her first book, 24/6, The Power of Unplugging One Day a Week, which is what we're going to talk about today, has been featured in the New York Times, the Harvard Business Review, and the Washington Post. 24/6, just a couple of weeks ago, was awarded the Marshall McLuhan Outstanding Book Award. It was also awarded a starred review from Publishers Weekly. It was included on several bestseller lists, including Best Business Books, Top Tech Books, and the Library Journal National Bestseller List. Tiffany has premiered 4 films at Sundance. It's like, it goes on and on.
That's enough. But thank you. But yeah.
Almost done.
And I'm a Jew. I'm a proud Jew.
And she's a proud Jew. And the U.S. State Department has selected 4 of her films to represent the U.S. at embassies around the world for their American Film Showcase, which is incredible. Like, to think you're an emissary for the United States around the world. That is amazing. And the message is,
it's interesting because I did that under the Obama administration. And it's interesting now because that program still is active, where they send artists and filmmakers to other countries to bring more world understanding. But it's interesting to think of in light of the current state of the world right now. But yeah, but it was a great honor. They sent me to Israel, they sent me to South Africa. I did workshops in Lebanon. It's been an amazing program to use film as a way to open up discussions about larger issues, which I hope my book does too. But that's always what I'm striving for, is to look at these complicated, mucky issues and kind of open them up through words and images and make you want to go in and get into them.
You really do. You really do. It's incredible. Okay, so quickly before we get into the book, I just thought it would be really amazing for people to hear you talk a little bit about the Webbies, which of course you also talk about in the book. But what made you found the Webbies? For people who don't know, you should know what the Webbies is. But tell us a little bit about it, about the platform, about the major influencers that you've gotten to, be part of the platform, how much it's grown since you founded it.
Yeah, it's such a different chapter of my life. But it really started with, I was in high school. My family was from Odessa. They escaped. We lost family in the Holocaust, everything, and no one ever wanted to talk about Odessa in my family because it was this horrible place that they escaped. So of course I was fascinated. So as soon as I had a computer in the 80s, this was before the web. If everyone can go and try to imagine the world before the web, computers were not connected, but I had a computer and I had one of the first early connections. And this other computer nerd and I in high school wrote this proposal called Uniting Nations in Telecommunications and Software in the 80s, before the web. And that was the early seed of the potential of the web that would later get invented, the potential to bring people together. So when I first saw the web in 1994, I thought, this is going to change the world. When we can connect people from all over the world using computers, it's going to change everything. And then shortly after that, I was given the opportunity to found the Webby Awards from scratch. I was 26. I worked my ass off for a decade, honoring the best of the web, everyone from literally the founders of Google, the first month they invented Google, to Prince and all the innovative stuff he did with music. And I sold it about 13 years ago, and it still goes on every year in New York and now virtually with the pandemic. But I'm really proud of, I worked so hard on it. Really, it was about honoring the best of the web. It was about every year saying, this is the standard for excellence, and push beyond it. And I think one of the beauties of the pandemic, and blessings, which there have been many, is to see the web used for the best of its strength. I've seen social media used in such a powerful way to share information about politics and about COVID, and to make people laugh and to make people feel connected. And to me, the web is truly shining during this period, after, of course, lots of concerns about misinformation, which are still there and can happen. But I really feel like this last 4 months, I've seen the web to its strength. So I'm always interested in, how do you push this young medium forward? And when I say young, it's because still it's only a little over half the planet is connected. So just imagine the potential when everyone on the planet is connected, which I think will happen very soon. But just as important and potent and powerful as the web is, and the Webbies are with honoring the best of the web, is the last almost 11 years now, I disconnect from the network and I unplug from this very potent network, allows me to have perspective and presence that I don't have when I'm connected to it. And I think everyone needs to be aware of how much of a suck it is. And I mean, last night I just fell into it. I was in bed. I wanted to read, but I went onto my phone for something and I was scrolling for hours and I felt so empty at the end of it. I felt drained and empty. And I wrote in my journal this morning, I don't want to do that again. I want to read and unwind because it drains me. And we really need to be mindful of, when does the web fill your cup and inspire you and activate you and amplify you, and when does it diminish how you feel, and when does it suck from you? And that's what a lot of my book is about too, is really understanding how taking a true Shabbat, and I should say I'm not religious, I am a very proud Jew, but veer on the humanistic atheist side of things, but love Jewish rituals, love the ancestry, the ideas. And I think, oh wait, I'm just saying goodbye to my daughter. Oh, you're not leaving. Who's going to be a camp counselor? She's 11 to 3 young kids today. Have fun.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I love you. Okay. Anyway, so as potent and powerful as the web is, so I spent the first part of my career really building up and helping to push the web forward. And now the second, and then I made a whole bunch of movies. And then this last period, and I still make movies, but is about understand and respect the power of the web, but understand and respect the power of yourself. And you are not as powerful when you're jacked into that network 24/7. And there's this incredible Jewish wisdom of Shabbat, which is a day of rest, which is so radical. And most people, maybe they do a Shabbat once in a while, Shabbat dinner. But to me, the true power was when my family and I, after a very dramatic series of events in my life, decided to turn off all screens one day a week for what we call our tech Shabbats. And it's been absolutely the most profound thing I've done in my life. I'm 50 now. My husband is a professor of robotics. He obviously loves technology too. We both love it, but I don't love it 24/7. And now, after doing it for almost 11 years of turning off all screens with our 17-year-old and 11-year-old, it is the secret sauce to how to be creative, productive, connected, empathetic, have perspective. There's so many things I go into in the book because it's simply been the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I had to share it far and wide. And it's a Jewish idea. Like, everyone should be engaging with it.
It's incredible. And the way you describe it, I mean, I want to, so you said there was a series of dramatic events that happened in your life. And you also mentioned that you and your husband both love technology. And the book really does kind of interweave, technology with ritual, with just, just the way we live our life, like our everyday lives, and, family, and all these things. It also weaves in a really complex understanding of our brain function, yeah, which connects to the dramatic incident in your life that led you to begin turning off for Shabbat. So could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So I grew up in a household where my father, he was a surgeon, and he operated on the brain and wrote about the brain and brought a human brain in formaldehyde to my 4th grade class. So I was obsessed with the brain from a biological perspective. And my mother was is a psychologist, but was getting her PhD when I was growing up. And she talked about the emotions of the brain. So I grew up in this soup of the, left brain, right brain, the emotions, the biology. And I made a lot of films about the brain, always been very interested in it. So there's a lot of neuroscience in the book. But the very dramatic series of events is my father, who knew so much about the brain and taught me so much about it, had brain cancer, and he basically died. And then days later, my daughter was born. And it was one of those life moments where I felt like life was grabbing me by the shoulders and saying, focus on what matters. You're distracted all the time. What are you doing? And actually, I feel like we're in a similar moment right now with the pandemic, where the world is grabbing us by the shoulders saying, what are we doing? Yeah. We were running around all the time and we weren't focusing on what matters. So there's a lot of parallels to me, but that was the moment that my husband and I, we just had our second daughter. I was feeling like I had to stop the madness. I was feeling everywhere and nowhere. And we turned off screens for Shabbat, Friday night to Saturday night. I should say my husband lived in Israel and used to do Shabbat there, because as a country, he said it was so weird. I went to Israel, the whole country shut down. I couldn't do anything. And at first he was frustrated by it, and then he came to love it. He would read poetry, he would paint, he would do everything but robotics, which is what he was there for. And so he really, taught me about he grew up doing Shabbat dinners. But then when the iPhone came out, that really like changed the game for everyone, because there's no off, and the blurriness of technology. You can always be working from vacation. You can be working from anywhere, which is great and not great, because you never get a break. You never truly take time off. So when we made this commitment of let's do a tech Shabbat, let's turn off the screens, and it felt so good day one. It was like, I felt like I could exhale. And now I like I start looking forward to it on Wednesday. I'm like, oh, it's just a couple more days till tech Shabbat. We turn off every screen Friday night before guests come over for our at a distance Shabbat meal now outside. We have an incredible meal, and I always remind guests, that don't put your phone in your car because you're not going to show it. And all the screens are off, and it's literally the most delicious day. I journal, I read, I do big picture thinking. My family and I laugh together in a very different way. I have my best ideas. Now, as a filmmaker and a creative person, and I'm a big journal writer, all of my best ideas come on Saturday. Like, why wouldn't, this is like, I'm always trying to get into a creative state. And this is my most creative state, is when all the screens are off. And then what my husband noticed, and I read about this in the book, he feels much more productive. So, I think you think, oh, I need to be on all the time and working and knowing what's happening and so plugged in. But the truth is that when you really take a full day of rest, well, if you're a religious Jew, you call it 25 hours. I call it 24, but take a full day off, you're going to be 1,000 times more productive afterwards. So it's really understanding the value of rest, to the off to be on. And I do go into a lot of the neuroscience of, there's research on that proves why you're most creative when you're letting your mind wander. It's why you have your best ideas when you're doing the dishes or going for a run. It's because there's no new stimulation. You're working with what's already in there. So the reason I have my best ideas on Saturdays is there's a lot of new stimulation. I mean, how much news are we getting? How many things are we seeing on the internet? We're getting so much stimulate. And then this is my day to like process. And all these new things come out of that. If you never give your mind a full day to process, you're missing out on the hugest opportunity for creativity, for new ideas, for listening to the quiet voice. Like, if you're constantly on your phone and every screen that we have, you're never listening to what's the inner voice. That's what a lot of states of meditation and yoga and like all of these ancient wisdoms. Oh wait, come over here and say hi. You're gonna meet Odessa and our puppy, because
yay!
Come here. She's my inner state. Come here. Oh, this is Rosie.
Oh my God, you've gotten so big.
You've gotten so big. She's like bigger than me now, but she is a bundle of love. She is total love. And okay, going for a walk.
Marshmallow.
She's a marshmallow. That is a
so cute.
That's so funny. That's a great word to describe her, because she is like a marshmallow of love. She's just like,
Mush her. Oh, so cute.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so I think there's so many things I've learned. And the reason, after we'd been doing it for a decade and the world became more and more mashugana with being online all the time and staring at their phones, and I was like, I have to share this ancient practice, which I do look at like yoga. Like, I do yoga every day, and it's from another tradition, but I get a lot of value from that. So I thought, if I can, that's why I called the book 24/6 instead of Tech Shabbat. For a whole year, the book proposal was called Tech Shabbat, but I thought of kind of reframing Shabbat as a sense of time. So we live in a 24/7 culture, but 24/6 is much more powerful. So it was really interesting to kind of think of how to get to Shabbat and the ideas of Shabbat from so many different perspectives. And that's what's been really exciting, because a lot of Jews have read the book, and non-religious Jews, religious Jews, but then all the people that Christian and Muslim and all these other faiths that are reading the book and getting a lot out of it, and now doing Tech Shabbat is like, it's so much fun.
Oh, cool. Well, also, so speaking of the timeline, like you just mentioned the timing of all of it, like of the week. And I actually really loved in the first chapter when you were talking about how Shabbat started with the ancient Hebrews, but it was reflected in so many other societies and cultures. And actually, I never knew about the relationship to Shabbat and like our human commitment to astronomy, and then ultimately like the determination of our modern Gregorian calendar. Like, it all comes out of Shabbat. That was mind blowing.
Well, even like the word sabbatical. Like, when a professor goes on sabbatical, that comes from Shabbat. Like, you're going to take a break from your academic studies so you can let your brain recharge and lie fallow and come up with new ideas. And that is really the thinking of Shabbat too, that, you know, and I think we're in a big period of Shabbat right now with the pandemic where we're kind of forced to do things differently. And that's another thing that if you listen to Orthodox Jews and they do all these things differently on Shabbat, and I do things differently on Shabbat too. Like you know, I've been doing during the pandemic this Zoom challah bake where I bake every Friday with, and actually Jake Cohen, who I met watching on one of your talks, I invited him as a guest chef, which was super fun. But there's all these rituals baked into Shabbat already. And then I've added all the ones with screens, because to me, that's like a modern interpretation of this very ancient practice is do no work on Shabbat. And what does work mean in the 21st century? It's all the screens and even our leisure. When you have to post something on Instagram and add a filter and add a witty caption, it feels like work. Even though you're on vacation trying to post some cool photo being on vacation, you're like exhausted by the end, and you're checking, did people respond? And there's all these expectations on you. So like how do you relieve yourself of any pressure of being on? Like if we say working is being on social media is being on. So it's really interesting to think about in terms of the world we're living in. And then in terms of the pandemic, it's only become like 10 times more important it lets me know what day of the week it is. It's still my family's favorite day of the week. And it's been the one consistent thing when there's so much uncertainty.
It's the pandemic. I read the book during the pandemic and I was struck so many times. It's just so crazy, this world we're living in, but I was struck so many times, like you would write, you know, on Fridays, you and your daughter make the dough and then you let the dough rise all day. So you wrote like, we make the dough and then we go to the farmer's market and then I go to work. And then when I come home from work and I'm like, what do you mean you go to work? Because like in my head, like we don't go anywhere to go to work anymore. And I was like, oh yeah, this book was not written like a week ago.
I know.
It was like so mind blowing, but it really made me feel the same way that in this time that we're living in, what you are telling us to do, the prescriptions of this book have extra meaning because nobody feels properly connected to each other.
Right.
Feels tethered, right? Like we all just feel like we're floating in some alternate universe.
Yeah.
And time, as you said, doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but we don't have any concept of it. Yeah. And even to turn off, like when is the end of a work day? Like usually you have like cocktails or a workout class or, you know, or you have to get home to relieve a nanny or to pick up a kid from preschool or whatever it is, there's an end to the day. And now I feel like it's 24/7, the same thing. And so what you're recommending that people do is to make sure that extra day is something different, something personal, you know, an opportunity for connection. It feels extra resonant. I think this book would have been resonant for me before, you know, in absence of pandemic, but.
No, you're bringing up a really good point because, you know, the interesting thing about Shabbat, when I really went deep on it, was that you treat your home as a sacred space. And, you know, you set the table in a beautiful way. We do fresh cut flowers. We, you know, before the pandemic, when we had people inside the house, now we're doing it outside. But I think right now when we're like living and working, we're never leaving the house except for hopefully a walk every day, which my puppy's definitely helping do. But bringing back the sacredness. I mean, your house is like work and home. And for me, I'm living with, you know, 3 people in my family and animals, and it's like chaos. And so one day of the week, it's different. And we put the screens away and we set the table and we clean up and we try to bring a sacredness back. And I think this is really important, is to make the day feel different than the other days. And there's so much research in neuroscience, and probably any of you that have gone to like a 2-day retreat, a weekend retreat that was so intense and different, and you felt so inspired afterwards. That's the way I feel every week. Every week, I feel like I get to think deeply about the world. I get perspective on what's happening because there's so much happening right now. And I do a lot of writing on Saturdays. Which if you're a religious Jew, you're not allowed to write on Shabbat. But for me, it's like my best writing is done. I do a lot of, but thinking, I'm just like processing and I'm unpacking, and I have a section, and I highly recommend everyone should get a pandemic journal. It's my pandemic journal. But get a notebook that you just write thoughts about now, because I'll tell you, your grandkids are going to want to know, what was it like? And what are you going to have? Texts and emails. And I watched this documentary about the Spanish flu, and my favorite sections were the journals and what they were writing. And I think it's a real opportunity that we're living in a moment in history that they're going to want to know about, and you're going to want to remember, what was I thinking then? So I do some of my best thoughts around that for the Saturday. And it's like, even things I like, when people send me a really interesting article, I'm like, oh my God, I'm too distracted to read that now. I'm going to print it out and read it Saturday. They say that people are reading more than ever now, but we're skim reading. We're not deeply reading. So I save things that I want to read deeply for Saturday. And I play music on Saturday. I do all these things that I love to do, but I want to do them in a more focused way. Like last night when I was scrolling way too much, I actually had wanted to read. But how many of you read differently now? There's one line in the book that makes you think of something on your phone. You go on your phone and then the book's down and you're not reading anymore. And on Shabbat, I read in a really profound way. I read deeply.
You also mentioned multiple times in the book that I think this is going to stick with me, that when you're interrupted, it takes you 23 minutes to like recover and get your focus back. And that is my entire day, interruptions. And I was sort of like, how do I overcome that? I mean, Context Shabbat, how do I stop the
distraction? I like that. Yeah. And time is so different now on how distracted. I mean, I think you and I both, like, I'm normally very good time management, but I find during this period, time has this very weird way of me. I've missed some things. I've like, because my normal systems are just,
I had
no, but I have two. Like I had this appointment this morning that I kind of didn't realize might run into this. I think it's just, I think the distractedness, like I'm very distracted by sounds, and in my house there's a lot of sounds, and now I like go into the bedroom when I really need to think. But on Saturday it's a much more quiet day because there's no phones buzzing. There's none of that technology distraction, which is so much. So I think we need to be mindful of our brains and how we're treating them and giving them the space to process, giving them our brains the space to think uninterrupted and to appreciate things. This is the other big, profound thing I've noticed is that when you're on the internet, you're in a constant state of want. You want the next stressful news headline. You want to see the next post on Instagram. You want on TikTok. You can never get enough. You're like, it's the way I was scrolling last night. Like you can never get to the bottom of the internet. When I turn to
satisfied.
You're never
Which is such a good thing, by the way, to always be unsatisfied.
But always be unsatisfied, and not in a Hamilton kind of way, but like in a never, like you never can get what you're looking for. When I turn the screens off, here's the most profound thing that happens. I immediately appreciate what's right in front of me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a roof over my head. I can use my fingers. This peach tastes so good. Like I'm suddenly immediately go from a state of being hungry for more to being completely satiated and appreciative and grateful. And it's so profound. Like now I think my body, the muscle memory, it's like the screens go off. I'm like, and look at my life. I'm so grateful. Even in a pandemic, I have a roof over my head. I got a puppy. I got a family. Like, I think I just immediately start not wanting. And so we should think about that. Like, you know, I love fashion. Also, fashion's been so weird during the pandemic, but I remember, you know, just being online and just like, these little teasers, the advertisements to make you want to buy something. And that's how the internet sadly became designed. There was a certain period where the advertising model took hold of the internet, and the way that they drip you likes on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and put the ads, like the model is to keep you hooked. So when you unhook from that network, powerful things can happen that you've forgotten because no one is ever offline anymore. And that's what I'm here to tell you, is to do this will become your secret sauce. It is the single best thing for creativity, for productivity, for happiness. I mean, I just feel so much happier on Saturday, and it reverberates throughout the whole week.
Yeah. You talk in the book about the science of addiction and how the internet, the connections, people, you had to read this. It's like, you can't, even having you talk about it, I feel like I've internalized it because I read it. And it is so powerful to think about the fact that corporations are thinking about how to make us addicted to, as you said, this never-ending void of things that are real, things that aren't real, things that cater to whatever our particular interests are that they can figure out by what we click on. I mean, it is so scary. And it's interesting. It's actually, it's sort of paradoxical. I'm sure you've gotten this question a million times, that someone who loves the web and sees the value in the web so much that you created the Webby Awards also writes so much about the dangers inherent in the web. And you talk about how it plays to our weaknesses, not our strengths. And you write, it activates the animal impulses in us, which is like, whoa, what a profound thing. Makes perfect sense with you if you think about it, but who would have ever thought about it? I mean, it's just the way you realized all of these things is so powerful.
It does. It's like activates the beast within us instead of the prefrontal cortex, which is the more evolved part of our brain, which is like being mindful and thoughtful and intentional. But the web is playing to all of our like
the base instincts.
Exactly. You want to like, you at any, it's really interesting when you understand that struggle, and you see it really clearly when you truly unplug for a full day. And I just went on vacation with my family, and my husband is a professor. He was kind of working a lot in the morning, but I just, even seeing it made me not relax as much. And actually, we're not out and about as much, but I do talk about this in the book. And when we are out again and seeing people, I really hope we will put the fucking phones away. That even when you see someone else's phone on the table, you will be less present. And so you need to think about how much you're influencing other people by looking at a screen. And I know we're all at home right now, but I really hope that when we're at the end of this social desert that we've been in, that we're gonna, I mean, now when I'm with humans, I don't know how you feel, Amanda, but when I've seen a couple girlfriends at a distance, like my heart is about like beating out of my chest. It's like exploding. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. I'm like, I want to hug them so badly.
People. Yes.
I miss the hug. Yeah. But that's what the dog is providing. Like, oh, but I hope we'll really think like, okay, I'm actually with a human and I'm not going to be staring at my phone, because that's the way. Before the pandemic, I did this whole show at MoMA called Dear Human, and it literally February 15th was the premiere, the last possible moment we could have had a premiere before New York shut down. But my whole thing was like, my question, I kind of came to, I'm like, everyone's staring at their phones all the time. No one's present and no one's anywhere. And the end of the show, I said, what's it going to take for us to change this behavior? What could it be?
Oh, man, you asked for it. You asked for it.
What's it gonna take? Maybe a world pandemic? I don't know.
So, okay. So actually a question I have, if someone, and you talk about this in the book, if someone wants to do this for the first time, unplug, take the day. And to be clear, as you've said multiple times, you're not Orthodox, you're not religious, you're not necessarily advocating for, not write. You are definitely not advocating for not writing. You're not even necessarily advocating for not having music playing or, whatever, but it's about screens. It's about the way that our bodies react to screens. So for those who feel like they're really interested in trying this, but maybe their partner or their kids are going to resist, how do you suggest that they sort of wean their family into it?
Well, my kids love it. And it's always good to hear from them. But I think a couple things I would say is have them read the book. I've had a lot of either husbands say their wives or girlfriends, boyfriends. The one that was more addicted, they handed the book to them, because in the book I say a lot the why you should do it. But I think a better way to frame it, instead of we're turning off screens because it feels like people are being deprived of something, is to say, what do you wish we did more of as a couple or as a family? Or even ask yourself that, what do you wish you spent more time doing? Like, I wish I spent more time reading. And I'm so tired when I get into bed at night. So I need to make that time more in the day. So if everyone in the family or in the relationship wrote what they wish they had more time to do, and then fill the day with that. I mean, our Shabbats are the best day because we're doing all the things we love. But I would, I'm doing kind of a pilot program where I'm holding people's hands through 4 weeks of it. If you're interested, just like sign up for my newsletter at TiffanyShlain.com or sign up on social media. But
sign up. It's a good newsletter.
Yeah, I do a newsletter. But I think the book is like,
Sorry,
I have a lot of strategies in the book to how to convince your teenage kids, how to convince your partner, how to convince your boss. Because, to tell your boss, I'm not going to be online for a day. And I think it's a really empowering thing to do. I mean, I know at my film studio, when I started doing Tech Shabbat, because I used to work all the time. I worked 7 days a week, and that's what I thought you had to do. And then the minute I started doing it, and then everyone started taking the weekends off, and everyone was happier, and it was so much better. So, you have to prepare your family and your employer. I'm going to take one, and I write in the book how to frame it. I really feel like I feel burnt out. Everyone could say that right now. I'm so stressed from the pandemic. I need to just be unavailable for one day offline. I'll be totally raring to go after that. And I don't know anyone that would say no to that right now. I just don't. If you said for my mental health, and so I can be the most productive and creative person for this company, I need to have a full day where I'm not reachable. And actually, I love not being reachable. I have a landline in our house. We live in California, so those are good for earthquakes and fires also. But it's like $10 a month to have an actual landline. And if people really need to reach me, they can call our phone. But in 10 years plus, no one's really called. It's like, it's the one day that I'm actually not available to the whole world. Or if I use it, I call my mom.
Do people have the number?
Only my family, yeah.
It's just your family.
Yeah, only the family has the bat line.
So there's a thing that you say in the book that I loved. It's a one-liner. You're probably going to be surprised that it struck me, but you were talking about your Shabbat dinners, and you have the same meal every week. It's a ritual. It's something that is like such a part of your family. These Shabbat dinners, roasted chicken. I mean, it's like, I really felt like I was like at Shabbat, at the Shabbat table with you as you were writing about it. But the thing that really struck me was that you don't do a kids table. You don't separate. It's not, it's not based on age. It's everybody sits around the table and it's one communal conversation, and everyone is connecting, no matter like however diverse the table is, or in age or career or whatever. Everyone's engaging together in the same conversation. And you wrote that it has given your daughters a stronger voice in the fact that they are engaging with people who are different from them, who are older than them, that they feel part of this Shabbat community that you're building. And that was so powerful as a young woman who, there have been places where I've been able to sit at a table that has definitely made me feel so much more confident in expressing my views. And people always say to me, I can't believe you stood up in that moment, or, at that table. And when you wrote that, it really, really resonated. So I was just hoping you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, I love that you brought that up. Yeah, I think it matters. Like I go to a lot of, when I go to other people's Shabbats and the kids have their own table, and I'm like, that's not what it's about to me. To me, it's about, we have I put out these kind of question cards. Everyone goes around the table, and, at our most, we had 18 people at Shabbat, but usually it's about like 12 people, 2 families, and maybe some people from out of town that are in town visiting. But we've had, chancellors of colleges and doctors and writers, and we're always interesting people that we meet. We're like, come over for Shabbat. Like, you're coming over for Shabbat. Next time we can open up this world, you're going to come over. But people 100%. I want my kids, people I want my kids to meet that inspire me. And we all sit around the table, and everyone goes around and says what they're grateful for this week. Sometimes we say something we want to let go of from the week, something we learned that week, and something we're looking forward to next week. And in those questions, so much can happen. And it's one conversation. And I really do believe that because our daughters see that they're going to get equal time at the table. And I should tell you, I came from one of these Jewish families where everyone was talking. You had to fight for airtime at my table. And I consciously wanted it to be differently at my family table, where everyone gets space, because I was the youngest and I was like fighting for a line. And my family, everyone's high achievers. Everyone's like, and at our table, I wanted people to feel like they had the room to unpack what they were thinking about that week. And I love that Shabbat is about a week, and it really helps you be reflective. And people have been very vulnerable. Like we've had very impressive people reveal some very vulnerable thing at the table, or some incredible thing they learned. And everyone's speaking so that everyone can understand it, which is really, when I make movies, that's my goal. Like I make films about very complex neuroscience, but my goal is to make it so accessible that a 5-year-old would understand it. And when you're talking about any big issue in politics or in education, anything going on, but you have to explain it in a way that's accessible, it's very powerful as a way to have a table conversation. Eventually I'm going to make some table conversation cards, because, it's really interesting how little prompts you need to get people to open up and really bond in a deep way. So I think the girls, they've both mentioned it, and I have my youngest lead the conversation. She starts it and explains it to everyone, and she's 11. But, just having the youngest person at the table, which was me at the table, setting the tone has also been very intentional.
I love that. I really do. I think it's game changing for the development of young people, like not just girls, but all
Yeah.
people, to know that like they have their opportunities to weigh in, even if it's someone who's a very prominent member of society or whatever. We should all be engaging anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, you describe in great detail what vision means for us in the book and how it enhances nonverbal communication and connection. And you talk about even from the moments a baby is born, how you can communicate with, by looking into someone's eyes. And you have a very powerful and emotional story about eye contact in the book. And I hope it's okay I brought that up. It made me very emotional, having lost my dad 2 years ago, to read the way you talk about your dad. I felt really like seen in the way that you talked about that. But how, so just reflecting in general on vision, sight, like the way that we connect nonverbally, and then how does our abusive relationship with technology affect our ability to connect in this way?
Well, it's really interesting because we just got a puppy, as you've seen, and so much is about eye contact. When you're trying to connect, you're trying to make eye contact with your puppy. And so many people don't make eye contact now because they have their phone right there. It's like out, and it's part of any conversation. It's just right there, and you're mostly there, and then you're looking up. And you're immediately saying to the person that they're not as important. That's what's on your phone. And wherever your eyes go is saying what's important. And evolutionarily, your eye contact, it's the reason why the news puts the most sensational things on the news, because they're trying to keep your eye contact. And we're living in an attention society, which is all about eye contact. But it's really good the next time you're with someone. I mean, actually, it's funny on Zoom because I want to be looking at you, but I'm trying to remember to look at the camera. So I'm looking. It's so frustrating because whoever invents the thing so that I can be looking at you and the camera, but it's so off. Like, I think that's why Zoom is so exhausting on some big level, is that we are not making eye contact. Like, I am looking at a camera and not at you right now, and I want to be looking at you. And
I look at both. I look
at both.
Talking, I look at the camera, and when you're talking, I look at you.
That's interesting, because I just find the whole thing kind of, it's like slightly off. So I think it's like spiritually exhausting because I'm not truly looking at you, and I want to be, but
it'd be way more fun if we were in the same room.
I know. So, but I think eye contact is really interesting because the phones are designed to just like keep you staring at it and keep you looking at the screen. And when I turn the screens off for that day, I mean, I just feel like I opened my eyes for the first time all week. That's when I'm really noticing what's around me, because the other thing is we're so disembodied when we're at our screens. I mean, especially during the pandemic, I had carpal tunnel for the first time because like my body is just like, atrophying. And when you put the screens away, you kind of remember like, oh, you have a whole body and your body language matters and all of this stuff. So, it's interesting because like right now you can't see my hands, although I bring them up a lot. As a filmmaker, half of what people saying is in their hands, but Zoom is limiting it to our faces. But really, when you're talking to someone, the way they move and the way their hands are, so we're losing so much information on the screen. And I can't wait till they advance all these tools, which again, I think we're in this period that was very much like the early days of the Webby Awards, when the web was very young. Like, all the Zoom technology is very young. There's so many things I want for it to have, like, that it doesn't have yet. But that's exciting to me because there's a lot of room for improvement. We need to create like the Zoomy Awards.
I was talking to someone today, like earlier today, who said he runs another Jewish organization, and they're doing a Zoom gala, and he was telling me about all these tips that he's gotten. There are experts, Zoomographers or something, and tell you how to make a Zoom celebration and how to do a gala, and how, like, when you start the Zoom, instead of saying, like we all say, we're going to start in 2 minutes, just stay tuned, the speaker's joining, or whatever it is that we always say when you start a Zoom, that you shouldn't say that. You should actually say, I mean, this is different because we're on a webinar versus a Zoom meeting, but how you should actually, if it's a meeting, you should say to everyone, as we get started, you should change your name on the Zoom to a city that you would like to visit. And there,
that's fun.
I want to go to like Caracas. And then someone else will say, I've been to Caracas, you know, I can tell you about whatever, how to travel Venezuela, whatever. So there are all these creative ways to actually engage people from the moment that you get on the Zoom and to personalize it, which is
Well, any of your listeners, we're not doing one. We're taking a little break for the summer for our Zoom holobakes, but they're very lively. And I've been doing so many experiments. Like as people enter the room, I'm always like, tell me where you're baking from and how you're feeling this week. And they're in the chat. And I always have it on gallery view. And, you know, there's like so many screens of people. We have people from Berlin and Italy. And it's so much fun if you put it in gallery view so you get that gestalt experience of who's in the room. That's why with the webinar format, I can't wait till they invent it, where there can be two of us speaking, and then there can also be, you can see everyone in the room, and that you'll have that sense. Like I do a lot of theater presentations, and the thing that's missing with Zoom is just having the sense of who's in the room. And yeah, the community, exactly.
Yeah, which for a holobake, I'm sure matters a lot. You want to feel like you're part of like a community. Yeah. Okay, can you explain how you think screens put our bodies into fight or flight mode on a regular basis? This was also mind-blowing for me to think about. Really, everything that you say in the book that had a real, which is so many things that had a real impact on me, are things that when you say them seem so obvious, but I would have never ever thought about, and are going to change the way that I operate and think moving forward for sure. Like it's like that every time we go on our phones or on the internet or we're reading news sources or whatever, it's like there's stress accompanying that, or there could be joy, there could be positives too, but there is an emotional reaction to everything that we're doing when we are on a screen. Everything.
Yeah, everything. And you know, it's really changed the way, you know, I used to, like most people I'm sure are doing now, is wake up because your phone's your alarm clock and go to the New York Times app. That's usually used to be my what stressful news headline. And then when Trump got elected, and every day he was doing something that would like just raise my heartbeat, I hated waking up that way. I'm like, I am letting Trump dictate my day, and I don't want to do that. And so I decided 2000, whenever he got elected, eons ago, that I wasn't going to look at my phone when I woke up, and I used something called a 5-minute journal. So my phone, I keep it to airplane mode for 20 minutes. And I am telling you, that is such a simple little ritual. And I talk about these a lot in the book, all these like little things I do throughout the week. But I wake up, I'm not going to let the New York Times or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok set the mood for my day. I'm going to set the mood for my day. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to write in my 5-minute journal 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that would make today great. What's happening today? What am I thinking? What did I dream? Then I turn on my phone. And that little 20-minute, so that the cortisol isn't coming from the news, because the news is designed to keep your eye contact, to stress you out, because in human evolution, the thing that kept your attention was fear. So the news is designed to speak to your amygdala, which is the fear center in your brain, and that shoots cortisol and that stresses you out. So I think it should be renamed the amygdala media, because it's all just trying to get you to watch it based on fear. So once you really think about it that way, you're like, oh, I'm going to take the reins back on my mood, and I am going to set an intention for the day. And that's such a simple thing you can do. And like I told you last night, I was on the phone too much and I didn't sleep well and I didn't feel good. And I woke up this morning going, I'm not going to do that. That's like unhealthy for me. And I think right now there's another pandemic, which is the mental health. Like, how do you stay positive? What are little things you can do to keep your optimism, your energy? And we have an election coming up. Everyone needs to stay very focused on that. It's a huge election in our lifetimes. And I think not looking at your phone for at least 20 minutes when you wake up is a good starting point. And then for me, the real big one is a full day every week will give you this profound sense of recharging and perspective and gratitude and so many things.
Well, so you also, you talk about, of course, social media, how it can be antisocial and dangerous and manipulative and corporate, and how it undermines relationships and elections. And I mean, there's so many things. It's all true. Again, maybe not something that we're all thinking about, but when you read it, you're like, wow, oh my God, terrifying. And then you talk about several authors whose books you have read that go into great detail on how, you know, what social media is doing, how corrosive it is for our lives and our world more broadly. And it was such an important take. I mean, you obviously remain invested in the internet, like you continue to use the web. You talk about creating a strategy for using it. And you also recommend not just that people take Shabbat off, but that you find time, however often it is, to actually take a week off of the web, of social media. And I thought that was really interesting. And then I found myself really wanting to do that, like saying like, tomorrow, that's it, I'm off it for a week. The problem is professionally, I can't. I'm on social media for work. So do you think that there are ways to manage that? I mean, given the strategies that you've created for yourself to like protect your own mental health, or is it sort of like, if you can't do it, you can't do it, but you should try to do it?
I think you can. I mean, I think and I hope you take a vacation. Have you taken a vacation during the pandemic?
So I was talking about it yesterday. It's like a lot of people are telling me to take a vacation, and this is so nihilistic, but I'm sort of like, why? Where would I go? Like I can't see my friends. I can't, I just sort of feel like we're in this mode of there's really not a lot to get excited about or look forward to. So I know, and that's a mental health issue that's really.
Well, no, but it's interesting. So we just, wait, where are you based again? You're in New York. We rented an Airbnb, just about 4 hours away. So the big thing for us was it could only be as long as my bladder could hold, because I didn't want to use a public restroom. Right. So we picked Pismo Beach, I'd never been there. And just to be in a different location, I cannot tell you, we were on the beach. I learned how to surf, which my whole family surfed every day, which was amazing to learn how to surf at my age. I loved it. And it was so symbolic to life. The waves are crashing at you. It's just like life. You just have to keep standing up even when you get tumbled. Oh, Rosie, bring her over here, honey. If she's sorry, my puppy almost ran out the door. But I would highly recommend, Amanda, to go on Airbnb and find a change of scenery. My couple friends that had done it, it was so good. And I would say to go off social media. It's like, get 5 good books, think of some shows you want to watch, and rent a place somewhere else, just to get out of my house. I hadn't left my house in 5 months. I was like, oh my God. And it was so needed. And I feel very refreshed. And maybe learn how to surf. I mean, it was interesting to have to focus. Like every day I went into, in a wetsuit with my family for 3 hours a day and learned how to do a new skill. And it was great. It took my mind off of everything. It was great.
I love that you did it. My friends are texting me, I'll go on vacation with you. But I had this conversation with a friend yesterday, and she was like, we need to just do it. It's hard. So, this is getting off it's a tangent from the book, but when, I have been seeing my mom who feels vulnerable. And so if you want to see anyone who's vulnerable to COVID, you really want to limit who you're interacting with. So it feels like there's so much balancing of like what the risk is, not just for you, but for anyone else that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing I would say is we're in for the long haul. And so that you can be best for your mom, I would say you getting a break. It's the kind of like put your oxygen mask on first so you can help others. That me getting that, we just took 4 days surfing. I feel so refreshed, and I was feeling burned out. And you're no good to anyone if you're not recharged. And that's what the book's about too. But I think during the pandemic, it's even more so like, tell your mom I'll quarantine for 14 days after. But we didn't really see anyone. We were just in a different space. That had been cleaned, and I had a lot of texts with them how they were cleaning and who was there before me and stuff. But I felt like, I'm so glad I did that. You should do it.
Okay, well now I'm convinced. I've been thinking about it. It's hard to trust where you're going, and is it
Yeah, I mean, I think you're picking a place that's not like, a couple friends invited me to, and it would have required a plane, and I said no.
Yeah, you don't fly.
No. So just like a simple place that's nearby that you could just have a change of scenery.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm checking. There are no questions in the Zoom. If anyone has questions, feel free to ask. I have a million more questions, but I also could just call Tiffany after this and ask her. So if anyone wants to ask questions, please feel free. I'm just checking on Facebook right now. Anyone who's watching.
And I'll send you in the follow-up that you can send. I'll send some links. My dog's like, wait 1 second. I'll be right back. Rosie, okay, wait a second. Rosie wants to visit everyone one more time. You guys are all gonna come here, Rosie.
Rosie. Oh, there's 2 questions that came in.
The big marshmallow is coming back. Oh.
She's delicious. I really, really want to squish this marshmallow. She's
my gosh. She is.
Hi, Ruthie.
Hi.
That's the other. Turn off your phone and get a dog.
Get a puppy. That's my big message.
Is adopting puppies because all the shelters are empty. I don't know what people are gonna have to do with them.
They're the best. They're the best. They're pure love, walking love. We also have a cat, which are also love. I think animals are really about being present. I mean, animals take you off the screen and they make you be present and pet and snuggle and think and walk and.
Yeah, love them. So somebody wrote a question. So the issue isn't screen time, but social media and constant interruptions. And she said, so in other words, movies are okay. Like when you said to go on vacation and turn off your screen and.
What my texture bots, we don't do any screens.
Yeah.
But on vacation, yeah, we watch movies.
Just not on Saturday.
Texture bot, yeah. It's good to give yourself a restriction of like you're not going to be living in the interweb or in a movie. You're going to live in your own life.
Right.
For a day.
But this was another mind-blowing thing that the course of human history, when you think about the technological advancements we've had in the last 100 years, it is astonishing to think where we would be in 1,000 years from now. Like it's.
Or just imagine the pandemic without the web.
Right. Without Zoom.
I mean, we'd all just be like,
and how much harder it would be. I mean, that it's there, and you talk about this, how it's a balance, how much better it is that I can FaceTime the people that I love that I can't physically be with. There's so much positive, but I see the toxicity also it's next level.
Well, I hope you're going to try it. I hope everyone listening, hey, Dessa, I think Rosie's somewhere she shouldn't be. Okay. This is the joy of doing it in your own house. Well, I hope you try it. I hope you have a vacation. And I hope anyone listening, I really think getting the book is really my guide to how to bring this into your life and in the why. And I'll send you some follow-up links of some short films I made on the subject too, that I think people would be interested in.
Yes, we will send in the follow-up to this to everyone who registered, and we can post on Facebook too, some films, the link to sign up for Tiffany's email list, which I find so excellent every week. And I get really, frankly, annoyed from people who send too many emails. This is not one of those. This is a really, really substantive, informative email. Your brother, Jordan Shlain, is an iconic doctor who has been doing amazing things for COVID. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, in the newsletter, I include his dispatches. So he's a doctor who's really been on the front lines of everything. So the newsletter is a combination of Jordan's dispatches, his thoughts about what we should be doing, as well as things we're working on and films to watch, books to read, anything that I think will help inspire you through this period.
I've joined some amazing webinars that I found out about through Tiffany's email. And then, of course, there's the Zoom Holobake, and we can send a separate link for that, but that's usually in the weekly email also.
I love I love everything you're doing. I'm so glad this organization exists and it has you as its leader.
You're amazing. I have a closing question that's on the same wavelength of strong women who, find the voice and the power to speak. And there's a little anecdote in the book that I just really loved. You talk, and it's just a fun thing to close on, where you talk about your red lipstick and your hat and how much they're part of you and the backstory of them. And you don't tell the backstory, but the hat reminded me so much. I think you're going to laugh. Last week, I was just really down about everything, and I rewatched Pretty Woman for like the 10,000th time. And I really recommend
I haven't seen that in so long. I should
watch it. So you say in the book how our favorite movies, when we watch them now, we realize how sexist they are, or how whatever. And that, of course, Pretty Woman, pretty sexist. But there's a scene in the movie. I mean, it makes me laugh, and it brought me so much joy. There's a scene in the moment where Julia Roberts is dressed in this like very classy outfit. and a man treats her, he's an animal. I mean, he treats her horribly, and she gets really upset. And she says, when I'm in my hooker outfit, I can handle it. I know how to respond. I feel like myself. I'm in my own orbit, you know, like I feel my power because I'm dressed the way that I'm the most comfortable. But when I'm in this fancy outfit, when I'm in these clothes that don't feel like me, I lose my ability to actually like stand up for myself and to respond in the way that is organic to me. And of course, your hat is not at all like a hooker outfit, but it's, it just reminded me when you wrote how when you're wearing your hat, you feel like yourself, you feel like Tiffany, like you could handle anything.
I do. I feel like it's like my power source.
And I love that. And because you are such an empowered woman, I now feel like I need to go get a hat. I just
Go get a hat. It adds like this je ne sais quoi. I put my hat on, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to roll. And you know, when I used to go on a film set, which has been a while during the pandemic, but I wear my hat, I'm like, I'm ready for action. I'm ready to make anything happen. And a lot of people, you know, I think also, I like that it plays with gender. I usually wear a fedora. And I will tell you that my lipstick is from my bubby, my grandma Frances, who said, if you wear red lipstick, people will pay attention to what you say, which is true.
It has worked for you. And thank God you have been such a voice and been so empowered, because you have done amazing things that we can all learn so much from. And I'm super, super grateful for you doing this with us and for your support of Zioness and just for everything you do. Everyone, please get the book. We will also send the link to buy the book in our follow-up email, but you have to. I mean, people are texting me that they're getting the book really right now. So it's really good. And it's an easy read. It's not like now my mom is texting me that she has lots of pretty hats that I can have. So this is very interactive, not just on the Zoom, but in my personal text.
I think you'll enjoy it. It's a fun read. I have a lot of fun with it because, you know, life should always have humor in it. And I try to make you laugh as well as try to make you think. And with my movies, that's a goal. Think, cry, laugh, and evolve.
So many important lessons for what we're living through right now. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Have a great evening. And it was so great talking to you.
Take care. Goodbye, everyone. See you on the next webinar.
Bye.